You can be successful and respected by everyone around you and still feel completely alone in life, almost like no one knows who you truly are. This is for the kind of man who feels admired by the people around him. Maybe people ask you for advice, they trust your opinion, but underneath all of that, there's a quiet sense of specific loneliness. You feel that if these people saw the real you, the one who felt emotions, the one who felt uncertain at times behind the confidence, beneath the performance, then they may not even stick around. If that's you, you don't have a social skills problem or a communication problem. And this is really not your fault. My name is Ege, and I've coached hundreds of analytical men around this subject. And this is a very common pattern I see with men who are successful and high performing. So I'm going to show you why being respected and being known are completely different things. The exact belief that makes you feel lonely, even with all the success in your life, and how to actually close it. So if you're ready, let's get into it, right? So let's start with the paradox because for our purposes, naming it precisely, almost like an engineer, is very important. Admiration is not connection. Being respected is not intimacy. Being needed is not being known or someone feeling close to you, right? You can have a room full of people who do the first three, but you can still feel like you're starving for the last one. And here's how this shows up, right? Picture your last big win, or maybe like a birthday party that you were partaking in. Maybe it was your birthday, right? A rooftop, who knows? A time where you should feel like, oh, this is a peak moment of my life, around people who genuinely like you. And you look around and everyone's having a good time. And somewhere in the middle of all of this, you think to yourself, maybe looking into the distance, do any of these people actually know who I am? And if they got past the version of me who's performing at a high level, would they still be here? Would they still be here if I wasn't useful to them? And this isn't you having an existential crisis. This is the experience I'm talking about. And it's not as rare as a lot of people make it to be, right? In fact, a 2022 study in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that highly successful people report more loneliness, partly from being so self reliant and also from having distance to their peers, right? Harvard Business Review also found that more than half the CEOs feel lonely, and some of them believe that this is hurt their performance. The higher you climb in your career, and the more you become someone that other people want something from, the more people relate to your achievements, your roles, and the fewer get anywhere near the human underneath it. So the question here was never what's wrong with me, it's how did this happen? And the answer is not, or the answer is a single core belief. And this is the mechanism, right? Somewhere early on, you learned that you were only valued for what you do. Maybe love or approval from your parents only showed up when you performed at a high level, you achieved, you were useful to them for their goals, who they wanted you to be, and they got quiet, even if they were aware or not, when you weren't. And this doesn't mean like there doesn't always need to be a villain in this story. I'm not saying your parents did really poorly. They may have been unaware of this. And this gets installed in completely normal families, right? I had a family where grades were extremely important. And if you got good grades, you got attention. And if you didn't, you still had attention, but it just wasn't the same. And with an experience like that, what happens to the young mind is you draw a logical conclusion. You say, I'm safe, I'm wanted, I'm loved when I'm competent. But when you fast forward 20 years, that belief is still running the show. And you're behaving with the idea that if I stay effective, I stay valuable. If I keep producing, I stay respected. If I keep achieving, I stay safe. So, what do you do with any part of you that's not polished? The fear, the doubt, the mess. Whether you're aware of it or not, you hide it. Not even consciously, just automatically, because on some level, showing it feels like showing the exact thing that would make you unlovable. And I want to be very clear here, right? Because there's a lot of content around that will tell you this is your fault, you're avoidant, you're emotionally lazy, you're wrong, and that's cruel. This is not a character flaw. It's just a belief you inherited before you were old enough to understand what was happening. And this is good news because beliefs can be changed, but first you have to see the specific trap it builds so you can understand the cost of staying the same. And here is the trap. Whoop, that was a strong scroll. The trap is you create a mask, and an analytical man wear a very sophisticated version of it, right? So this is very smart. The guys I work with, and I used to do this. We're smart people, right? You don't just avoid vulnerability fully. You don't look closed off. Because if you did, it would be too obvious to other people. What you do is instead you drip feed your vulnerability in controlled settings. You talk the language. You say, oh, I'm having a hard time getting into relationships because of my avoidant attachment. But when it comes to opening up to a person deeper than your avoidant attachment, it's like, whoa, what's happening? I'm not doing that. I can avoid, not avoid, I can understand my avoidant attachment, but I'm not opening up to someone because that's a bit too much, right? So you can be extremely vulnerable, speak the right words in a controlled setting, a retreat, a mastermind, a late night conversation where maybe you feel safe. But in your day to day life, the performance goes right back up. And you even turn the idea of being open into one more thing to manage, one more thing to perform for. And here is the cruel part. You get stuck in a loop. This is exactly what happens if you look at it here, right? First, the mask is there to protect you from rejection. But the mask is exactly what prevents you from getting close to the people that you want to be close to. People can only get close to what you let them see, right? So you hide the real you to avoid being rejected, which guarantees that the you people accept, is the performance, not the real person you are, which quietly confirms your original fear, right? See, if they knew the real me, they wouldn't be here. So that belief creates the mask creates the distance seems to prove the belief, and round and round and round we go. So, how do we actually break this cycle? Because most people never talk about this, right? Before I get to that, really quickly, if you want to know which belief pattern is holding you back in your life, maybe it's this, maybe it's something else, I built a free 3-minute quiz called the Mind OS quiz. The link is in the description. Go in there and take it so you can know the specific belief that's holding you back from living a good life from your potential and the specific solution for that belief instead of just doing guesswork in your belief work. So let's go into how do we actually change this? How do we close this gap? The standard advice people always give is just be more vulnerable, man. Open up. Come on, we'll accept you anyway. But again, our belief system doesn't want to believe that. So for a man running this belief, that advice goes whoop, goes in, and then just straight back out. Boom, 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 boom. It doesn't get implemented. It just backfires sometimes. Because to your nervous system, being seen isn't a neutral activity, it's a threat inducing activity. So you can't force yourself into intimacy when you're not relaxed. Trying harder to open up from a state of fear just makes you perform the vulnerability instead, which is again one more mask that you get stuck in. So, what we do is we approach this in a completely different order. First, we regulate, we build a little bit of safety in our own state, right? Using self compassion, telling ourselves, may I be happy, may I be at peace, may I be loved. Lots of videos on the channel around this. A compassion that's not conditional on your output. So being seen stops registering as danger. And then we go find the belief. I'm valued for what I do. And we trace it to where it was installed. And then we give it back, right? Because this belief was never yours. It was just the smartest conclusion a kid could have come to based on the experiences that he was having. And you don't need this belief anymore. And from there, what you do is you put small reps with this new belief. You don't tear the mask off in front of hundreds of people in an important presentation. You just let one person you feel somewhat safe around see one real unpolished thing about you. This doesn't have to be a confession, a traumatic story, anything like that. It's just a moment where you lean into the uncertainty and share what's real. And you watch what happens. These people don't leave, they usually move closer. And that's the belief updating through experience, which is the only way a belief really gets integrated into your day to day life. We can rewire it how many times as we want, but the stress test is integrating it with reality. So being known without a mask isn't like a personality trait that other people are born with and you're missing. It's actually a skill that you build for your personality type, one repetition, one conversation at a time, right? So here's kind of the summary and the truth to take with you. You were never someone who was hard to know, hard to connect with, unknowable, right? You had just built this defense mechanism. You're extremely well defended. You play better defense than, I don't know, a lot of NBA teams out there, right? And this is the difference. The people around you don't need you to keep performing. They just need you to open up those defense mechanisms a little bit, which came because of a belief you were handed a long time ago. That was the only thing standing between you and connecting with other people, that you're valued for what you do instead of who you are. So, if you want to find the exact belief running your pattern, take the 3-minute quiz in the description. It'll show you your belief archetype, the core belief driving it. And if this resonated with you, please subscribe, because I make videos like this multiple times a week for analytical men like you, so you can turn your mind into your biggest asset instead of a liability. Thanks for watching. I hope this is useful, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a good day.